In this video, we will look into sentiment lexicons. Here we have a list of several English-only sentiment lexicons. General Inquirer, developed by Stone and Associates in 1966, Dictionary of Affect, developed by Wiesel in 1989, WordNet Affect, developed by Vali-Tutti and Associates in 2004, Senti WordNet, developed by Esuli and De Sebastiani in 2006. And there is also Taboada's adjective list, developed by Wall Associates in 2006. It is an automatically constructed adjective list with positivity and negativity polarity assignment. Finally, we have a subjectivity word list, developed by Wilson and Associates in 2005. In this subjectivity word list, the entries are manually labeled with part-of-speech tags and either strong or weak subjective tag, depending on the reliability of the subjective nature of the entry. Harvard General Inquirer is a lexicon of English words that were manually assigned the information about the category across several dimensions. It contains 3,627 negative and positive words. Categories are positive, it has 1,915 words, and negative, where it has 2,291 words. Then other categories: strong versus weak, active versus passive, words indicating overstatement and understatement, often reflecting presence or lack of emotional expressiveness. Then there are words of pleasure, pain, virtue, and vice, as well as words reflecting the language of a particular institution, for instance, academic, legal, military, political, religional, etc. Furthermore, it contains words referring to roles, collectivitiness, rituals, and forms of interpersonal relations, often within one of these institutional contexts. It has ascriptive social categories as well as general references to people and animals, race, male, female, etc. It also contains references to places, locations, and routes between them. It contains references to objects such as tools, food, vehicle, natural objects, and processes of communicating. Finally, it contains motivation-related words such as need, try, or fail, and cognitive-oriented words such as knowing, assessment, and problem-solving. In the table, in this slide, there are numbers attached to different meanings of the word. For instance, absent in meaning number 1 is negative, while in meaning number 2 there is empty cell. 5,394 words have definitions. The values of the categories are binary. If there is a value assigned, for instance positive, it is written down. If it is not, there is no value in the cell. General Inquirer consists of Harvard 4 and Lasswell Value Dictionary, developed by Namenwirth and Weber, as described in their book Dynamics of Culture, containing 11,767 meanings of words. It was used as a golden standard in sentiment analysis and automatic detection of words that carry sentiment. Most words have only one meaning, and the granularity of meaning is lower than WordNet. Every meaning is mapped to over 180 classes, some of which are emotional, for instance, pleasure, pain, feelings, excitement. Two most profound classes are positive and negative. Words have binary membership in the category. The meaning of the word belongs to the category or not. The General Inquirer applications uses lemmatizer and word sense disambiguation rules, as described in Kelly and Stone from 1975. Sentiment is a feature of lexeme meaning. In these figures, you can see the most prominent sentiment categories in General Inquirer on the left side. So these most prominent sentiment categories are positive, negative, hostile, strong, weak, active, and passive. On the figure on the right side, you can see examples of the opposite sentiment. So positive is opposite to negative, strong to weak, active is opposite of passive, pleasure to pain, and overstatement is opposite to understatement. Dictionary of Affect in Language, DAL, was developed by Cynthia Wiesel in 1989 and is created after general inquirer. It is manually created. Each word is associated with a three-dimensional value that is located in the emotional space. It contains 8,742 words that are rated with regard to pleasantness, activation, and imagery on scale 1 to 3. So there is pleasant, and then there is a emotion in the middle, and then the opposite is uncomfortable. For activation, there is active, there is emotion in the middle, and then passive. And for imagery, there is a difficult to imagine, there is in the middle, and emotion which is easy to imagine. Dictionary of Affect in Language was not used for sentiment analysis as much as general inquirer, except for recent work that combines this lexicon and WordNet. And these two works, Sentiment Analysis of Twitter Data and Contextual Phrase Level Analysis using Lexical Affect Scoring and Syntactic Engrams, were written by Agarwal and Associates. WordNet Affect is an extension of WordNet domains, including a subset of synsets suitable to represent affective concepts correlated with affective words. Similarly to method for domain labels, they assigned to a number of WordNet synsets one or more affective labels called A-labels. In particular, the affective concepts representing emotional state are individuated by synsets marked with the A-label emotion. There are also other A-labels for those concepts representing moods, situations eliciting emotions, or emotional responses. The resource was extended with a set of additional A-labels called emotional categories, hierarchically organized in order to specialize synsets with A-label emotion. This structure of new labels was modeled on the WordNet hypernym relations. In a second stage, they introduced some modifications in order to distinguish synsets according to emotional valence. They defined 4 additional A-labels: positive, negative, ambiguous, and neutral. The first one corresponds to positive emotions, defined as emotional states characterized by the presence of positive signals or pleasure. It includes synsets such as joy or enthusiasm. Similarly, the negative A-label identifies negative emotions characterized by negative signals or pain, for example, anger or sadness. Synsets representing affective states whose valency depends on semantic context, for instance surprise, were marked with the tag ambiguous. Finally, synsets referring to mental states that are generally considered affective but are not characterized by valency were marked with the tag neutral. Another important property for affective lexicon concerning mainly adjective interpretation is the stative-causative dimension. An emotional adjective is said causative if it refers to some emotion that is caused by the entity represented by the modified noun, for instance, amusing movie. In a similar way, an emotional adjective is said stative if it refers to the emotion owned or felt by the subject denoted by the modified noun, for instance, happy boy. The authors have studied the use of words in textual productions, and in particular their co-occurrences with the words in which the affective meaning is explicit. They have to distinguish between words directly referring to emotional states, for instance fear or cheerful, and those having only an indirect reference that depends on the context, for instance words that indicate possible emotional causes as monster or emotional responses as cry. They call the former direct affective words and the latter indirect affective words. They organize direct affective words and synsets in WordNet Affect. Then they developed a selection function named affective weight based on a semantic similarity mechanism automatically acquired in an unsupervised way from a large corpus of texts in order to individuate the indirect affective lexicon. Applies to a concept, for instance WordNet synset, and an emotional category, this function returns a value representing the semantic affinity with that emotion. In this way, it is possible to assign a value to the concept with respect to each emotional category and eventually select the emotion with the highest value. Applied to a set of concepts that are semantically similar, This function selects subsets characterized by some given affective constraints, for instance referring to a particular emotional category or valence. Compared to DAL, this lexicon brings a different type of assessment because the terms are classified with respect to whether they denote or cause different physical or mental affective reactions. For instance, amusing movie versus happy boy. SentiWordNet was developed by Esuli and Sebastiani in 2006 and further updated by Bacianella and co-authors in 2010. It is based on WordNet 2.0 synset, where synset represents a semantic concept containing a set of synonyms. The information about sentiment is attached to synset. SentiWordNet is based on three assumptions. The first one is that sentiment can be attributed to a synset. The second one is that synsets can have both positive and negative characteristics at the same time. And the third assumption is that the presence of a positive or negative sentiment makes synsets subjective. SentiWordNet originated from the original set of words downloaded from the WordNet relationships and as such did not pass psychological evaluation. The consequence is a good coverage, but also inconsistency to a certain extent. Like WordNet 2.0, from which it originated, it consists of more than 200,000 word meaning pairs or 117,000 synsets. It provides polarity data for nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. Since SentiWordNet assigns points of sentiments to synset, the calculation of sentiment values at the document or text level is simply a sum of these points from the synsets found in the document. Here we have three seed sets, LN, LO, and LP. LP and LN represent a small number of synsets with a fundamentally positive or negative sentiment, like nice and nasty. Authors use WordNet relationships, direct antonyms, similarity, derived from, refer to, and also see relationships to extend LP and LN through K iterations. LOC set represents synsets which are objective. This is a set of synsets that are not LP nor LN. Seed sets are iteratively expanded through K steps. The classifier for the expanded sets is trained. The sets are at the end of the K step are called TR of K and P and TR of K and N. TR of K and O is the set that is not present in TR, K of P and TR, K of K and N. Classifiers of different types and different K values for the given data are trained. There are three classifiers: positive, negative, and neutral values for each synset. Low values of K give high precision and low recall. Accuracy in determining positivity or negativity remains almost constant. The features in the classifier are not the synsets themselves, but the synsets of their glosses, so the vector is assigned to the synset using TF-IDF on the gloss. The terms in the synset can have a value greater than 0 in all three categories. In other words, the term with the meaning defined by the synset has some amount of each value. For instance, estimable has positive score 1 and negative score 0 in the meaning deserving of esteem and respect, but it has both positive and negative scores equal to 0 for the meaning may be computed or estimated. Also, smart has, as an adjective, has 5 senses. For sense 1, it has positive score 0.5 and negative score 0 in the meaning showing mental alertness and calculation and resourcefulness. For sense 2, it has positive score 0.5 and negative score 0 in the meaning elegant and stylish. For sense 3, it has positive score 0.75, and negative score 0 in the meaning characterized by quickness and ease in learning. For Sense 4, it has positive score 0 and negative score equal to 0.125 in the meaning improperly forward or bold. Finally, for Sense 5, it has positive score 0 and negative score 0.875 in the meaning painfully severe. Positive has at least 3 interpretations. The term in the system is positive to some extent. The term in the systems are sometimes used in a positive sense and sometimes not, depending on the context. And finally, the annotator was not sure whether the terms in the systems were positive. Points are used to assign plus or minus features. Zhang and Zhang in 2006 used corpus words that have a subjectivity of 0.5 or greater. They combined positive, negative, and objective points to calculate sentiment on a document level. Also, Hewitt and Ahmad in 2007 merged polarity points with a graphic representation of a document based on WordNet. And here, finally, you have the references describing the sentiment lexicons we just mentioned in this video.